Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Microsoft AI Chat App Hack Final Project Showcase. We're super excited about today. We have just spent the last 2 weeks talking about how to make AI chat apps, especially using the RAG technique, Retrieval Augmented Generation. We've had a ton of sessions. We've had lots of great discussions in the forums. Everything is recorded, so you can go back and watch if you're just tuning in and missed our hackathon. And today we're going to be showcasing a bunch of hacks that have been submitted already. And we're really excited to show the huge range of super cool ways that people have used these large language models and other AI techniques. We're also going to have special guest speakers today from Microsoft from the AI in a Box project that are going to demo other ways that you can bring AI into your projects. All right, so let's go over to Josh for starting off our project showcase.
Awesome. Thanks, Pamela. Yeah, so we have a ton of projects coming in, and I'm going to show you a couple cool ones real quick. So first off, this really awesome chatbot that helps you decide on what courses to take. So if you're in university or if you've ever been through a university program, there's a lot of scenarios where you need to do a lot of research on your own to figure out what courses you need to take next. Or if you're interested in like any particular topics, then you need to do research to figure out like what types of courses are offered for that. And it can be a little bit daunting because there's a ton of resources online, usually from each of the different universities, and it can just be a ton of information overload, especially for new students. And so somebody created this chatbot, and it basically has all of the information sourced in from the University of Washington's 2024 course schedules. And so you see here, there's some suggestions here, but let's say you wanted to ask a little bit more about learning about investing or any types of like financial courses. So here's a suggested question. And you can see here, it's providing some information, and after it generates this, I can show you the citations. But basically, it's pulling all of this information on these different courses that I could use to learn more about finance from the different course schedules. So it's really cool to see all of this information coming in. And this is just from the official University of Washington course schedules for the different courses. So let's say I wanted to ask a little bit more questions about these courses. Let's say, I want to figure out like who is teaching the CFRM 532 course, right?
Sniffing out answer.
Yeah, and as you can see, it gives us a little answer here, Keith Ferguson, and we can go and check. I'm actually not sure where it is on this, but yep, right there. Keith Ferguson. So it's able to give you specific information about each of these courses. I could probably also ask about the time that the course is happening and other things like that. But it's really cool because you can get all of this functionality and it makes it a lot easier to build your course schedules. I wish I had this when I was going through university.
Yeah, I wish I had this when I was a lecturer at a university. The students were always asking the same questions.
Yeah, this one is really awesome. Like ton of headache is going away when you're building your course schedule. Up next, we have a project that helps you study for your courses. So this is also kind of along the same lines of education and RAG. And so let me just play this video for a second. But basically, you can see this is all information in a OneNote, different notebooks here with a bunch of information about specifically anime series and films, but you could make it about anything with just different information about the creators, directors, the films, just like different trivia. But let's say you're in a school setting, you could put in all your information about like your physics course load or whatever you're studying actually. And then you can just use the command line and it'll auto-generate information. As you can see here, it'll auto-generate questions from the notes that you took in your OneNote. And so you can go here and you can use it to very quickly and pretty much infinitely generate questions and test your knowledge before that big test, or maybe if you're trying to get a certificate or anything that you're studying for. This is a really cool way of doing that. Awesome. Next project coming up. And so we have this Contoso app right here, and this is actually built using Azure AI Studio. But I just had a question typed in here, but basically the data set that this is going off of is a completely Hindi data set. So it's really cool to see that coming in through the citations. And so I'll click on here. It's able to give us the information. And if I click on the reference, you can actually see it came, it's giving the citation and actually translated and everything. So it's pretty cool to see this answer come in. And this particular implementation is focused on providing answers related to science and math, specifically focused towards like grade school.
It's really neat with LLMs that they can just bring in, data in other languages, because normally you'd have to, in the past we'd have to bring in all these translation APIs, but now, you upload Hindi data and you're able to chat with that in any language, which is crazy.
Oh, it seems the information wasn't uploaded for that, but I did try to look into some other information there. But yeah, it's really awesome to see the cool language projects coming in. The next projects here, so the AI Sir, this is also an educational app. Continuing on with that trend, I'll just play this video a little bit. But basically, you're able to chat with your textbooks. So you can upload your textbooks, or teachers could upload their textbooks. You could switch language to Bangla, between Bangla and English. And you can also choose the specific class or like subjects. In this particular case, it's just showing class 9, class 8. But as you can see, there's different subjects for science, etc. You could the idea is you would upload a bunch of different types of textbooks and data sources, and then students would be able to ask specific questions about the sources. So as you can see here, there's a couple like suggested questions, and I think if we skip a little bit forward, so the video demonstrates clicking on one of those sourced questions, and then it also gives citations based on the actual like page from the textbook. So let's say you're in grade school and you're trying to study more about specific things, instead of having to like go through your entire textbook and try to figure out which section and where that information is located, you can instead type the question into your phone app, and then it'll generate that information for you. And here you can see it switches to Bangla, and you can get the same type of interaction this way. And it's generating, it's working on it.
And we had a question in the chat about whether the source code is available for these, for folks who want to build on it. And in fact, the source code is available for quite a few of them. If you can, after this, switch over to that issues tab so we can show people where to go who are looking.
Yeah, sure. So I have the issues tab open, but if you look over here, so on our Microsoft AI chat app hack repo, if you just click on here, this is like the landing page, right? All familiar with all of our sessions. By the way, they're recorded, so you can always go back and learn or suggest it to other people who want to learn. If you just come up on the top and you click on issues, this is where all the projects are submitted, and you can just look into them a little bit more. And if you want to build off of their projects too, you can do that. But yeah, so going on to the next project. So we're kind of delving more into, we're continuing on with educational applications, but now we're going more into healthcare, which I think is a pretty cool direction. So if you look here, this particular dashboard is asking about a patient's illnesses. So let's say like you're a doctor and you're trying to diagnose whatever your patient has. Let's say they said, oh, I have a cough and a fever. You can put your information into the system, and it'll be able to generate some possible like conclusions based on those particular symptoms. And so as you can see, it's generating some answers, and it also has citations based on that. And of course, you do want to point out that this is just to assist with people who are already medically trained. Of course, you could use this if you weren't medically trained, but I wouldn't advise just going completely off of a chatbot by itself. These are supposed to be tools to help humans do great things. So as you can see, generating an answer based on the cough and fever, there are several possible diagnoses. One possibility is scarlet fever, which is a communicable disease that can cause cough or fever. Another possibility is measles. And then you can ask some follow-up questions that are suggested here as well. So like, oh, how long has the patient had a cough or fever? Oh, are there any symptoms present, such as a rash or sore throat, etc. Right? And this hopefully will help you come to a quicker conclusion about what your patient, and accurate conclusion about what your patient might have. So if we skip further in this video, there's also some examples that show like, oh, here's like the supporting content. So if you don't trust, it's always good to check your where your data is coming from as you're using these chatbots, because they can be wrong sometimes. So we can see that. And if we continue on, there's also a section that focuses about asking about specific diseases. So if we see this section, let me go here. So in this example, we're asking about tuberculosis. And tuberculosis is also known as consumption, is a disease caused by tuberculosis bacteria, and it gives a bunch of information on that with citations. And so if you want to learn more about that, you can learn more about that. And then you can also upload more resources if you're more specialized in whatever particular practice you're doing. Any questions, Pamela?
No questions. I think it's really cool how this last one, they built off the open source repo, but they heavily themed it, like with that background, and also adding the ability to upload is something that they added as well. They've got authentication enabled. They've really customized it, so it's very cool.
Yeah, kind of the custom UI actually gives off the energy of like the healthcare portals very much. So I think they did a great job at that. Cool. So the next example here, there's a little bit more of a meta entry into healthcare. So we're still focused on healthcare, but let's say you're a doctor and you want to learn more about possible ways to implement RAG chat app solutions, or just like use AI in healthcare. How can we use LLMs to support mental health in providing professionals in providing healthcare? As you can see here, we have a database that's full of information and research on this particular thing. You can see here, there's a bunch of information coming in about how LLMs can support
bigger, this. Maybe full screen it or something?
Yeah, here, I can zoom in. Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. So as you can see here, all the data's supporting context is over here. We have our answer about how LLMs can support mental health professionals in providing care. Sorry about the video quality. And if we continue on in this, we can see the thought process along with the actual citation over there. And it's kind of funny because this is also definitely an interesting data set to pull from, because the last one was more focused on helping healthcare professionals diagnose or like learn more about particular diseases, whereas this one is kind of like teaching healthcare professionals how to use LLMs and what the practical applications are for different types of things. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think it's so meta. And I think it's great because I have a friend who's a doctor at Johns Hopkins. And as soon as ChatGPT came out, she and I were chatting about ways it could be helpful. And so this is so meta, but it's also helpful.
Yeah, very. Yeah, and then moving on to here, we have a little short that's showing some information here. Let me really quickly make sure that the audio is off, because I think we might get a copyright claim if we just play the audio. But here we go. So this particular hacker created or implemented a RAG chatbot into the Slack messaging. Like Slack is kind of similar to Teams or any messaging board that you might use, either professionally or not professionally, kind of like Discord. And it's really cool because you can turn on your chatbot and then you can ask questions within the chat inside of whatever channel you have. You probably would have like a unique channel just for asking questions. And then your other channels would be like normal channels for discussion between humans, human beings, people on your team, whatever you're using this for. But it's really cool to see this be able to use Chat GPT or use the GPT model at least to create something like this. Cool.
Yeah, it's nice to have these alternate interfaces. So Slack, mobile, because not everybody is going to go to a website. Some people want to interact in other ways, and that's also a way of making things more accessible. Because especially like in some countries, they're much more mobile, SMS focused versus website focused.
Right, and we have actually some more examples that kind of focus on that. What Pamela was just talking about, and Pamela will start showing some of those as well after we have a demo soon. I'll just have one more to show you, and then we'll move on to our demo with AI in the box. But really quickly, as you can see here, let me reload this so that it starts from the beginning. But here we have another healthcare chatbot, which these are really great. And this one I would actually, when I was looking at it earlier, I was thinking this would be really great to have on my phone. So going back to that SNS capability, let's say I'm like out on a hike and like I sprain my ankle, or one of my friends sprains my ankle. It'd be really awesome to just immediately be able to type in that question and be like, oh, how do I treat a sprained ankle? And then our chatbot is able to give us an answer on how to treat that and how to help our fallen hiker get back to safety, right? So in this particular example, it's talking about performing CPR. And so it's giving steps. It has our citations down here. And then you can see we're actually typing a follow-up question to ask, oh, like, maybe you've never done CPR before. I need some more information on this. So because this could be a life-threatening application, right, of CPR. So it's like, okay, how long do I perform the CPR? And then it's able to answer, and hopefully with a practical application of this, you'd be able to use this to save someone's life or help improve an injury in the field and that type of thing. As you can see there, it gives a couple different options based on the size of the person. You want to have different amount of compressions and rescue breaths.
Can you click on the data folder? Because there's a question about what docs they're using. I think you can see them here. Yeah, so they've uploaded 4 docs. I think remember it was the 4 docs. You can see them there.
Yeah, so these 4 right here specifically. Some of these are just there's like just different notes about first aid, but there's some official like actual documents here that just a ton of information on like what to do in different scenarios. And it's pretty cool to see that we get that much information just from a couple of docs. And if you expanded this, you would have a ton of information being pulled in. But yeah, really cool stuff. I think that's it for the first part of our demo showcase. Do we want to go on to AI in the box?
Yeah, so let's bring on Niraj, and we'll go off so that Niraj can intro AI in a box and their team.
Thanks, Josh and Pamela. So great demos. I mean, really love the demos that you guys have built it up in the last 12 days. What I'm going to present it out is AI in the box. So all the all the stuff that you build it up, something that we as Microsoft have built up accelerated solutions that can help you out build this up really fast. These are patterns, like repeatable patterns that you can use it up and expand on top of it. So what we are going to do is we are going to have 3 different types of demos that AI can help you out. And over to you, Andreas, for the first demo.
Box, well, what we're aiming to do is sort of encompass 4 different areas. And our first demo today has to do with edge AI scenarios. And with an AI in the box, we want to showcase that you can build a model and maybe deploy it. You wanted to be able to deploy that model anywhere, edge devices, heavy edge, light edge scenarios. Well, within that edge AI box that you have in here, which is right this section, we showcase right now 2 scenarios, which is how to take a model within Machine Learning Studio and deploy it out. But what we really want to concentrate in this sample is the interconnection between everything. There's a lot of moving parts when it comes to edge AI. There's IoT edge, there's the IoT side of things, there's the machine learning side of things. And this deployment right in here, what it does, if you just take AZD of it and you'll clone this repo, you'll change directory right into this machine learning edge in a box directory, and this deployment, if I ran this, I'd ran this before, right before we started, and I used AZD to deploy this. And what it did is it deployed all these modules. It deployed a container registry, a machine learning, a device provisioning service, an edge VM for testing purposes. A lot of companies come to us and they say, "Hey, wow, I want this all this interconnection. I want the full deployment, but I need a VM to act as an edge device." Within this deployment, you also get a VM. You get your IoT hubs, and you get all the necessary configurations that you would need to have an end-to-end scenario play out. And once you deploy that, you create a resource group like so, and inside of it, you get all these great goodies. Okay. And tying all these great goodies, there's a lot of interconnection and dance that goes on behind the scenes. We want to like cut all the weeds out for you. When it comes to that, we want to put that together. We do that. We create an IoT hub for you. Inside that IoT hub, you have the devices already connected. They're ready to go where you can deploy your AI model into it. That's the first plan of attack. So once you get that IoT hub, which you can do with this bicep deployment, beautiful, it gets created for you. The next step for you is you need to create a model. This deployment also gives you two notebooks. It brings up an ML Studio instance for you. Inside of it, we give you two notebooks. One of them is how to create a classification model in 7 easy steps. And we want to make this as easily understandable for all users. If you go through this notebook, you'll start to create bring down all your necessary training data, all the necessary training images. You'll put them in a format that you need. You'll walk through those steps one by one. It will intuitively describe what you're doing in each one of these steps. And these 7 steps are common for object detection and classification. You're going to create an ML instance. You're going to get your training data. You're going to put it in a format that you need it. You need to put it in a special format. You're going to need some compute to train the data. You're going to use AutoML's images and object detection training job, which will do a lot of magic behind the scenes for it. And then you're going to package it in an OnX format, model format, so that it's easily deployable into a container. This notebook will do all of that stuff for you. Once you get that going, you will actually have this model created for you inside of that virtual machine. That is your endpoint, and you can send an image or video to that endpoint and test out your job. That's the first scenario. The second scenario is custom vision. We also wanted to showcase how do you do this with custom vision. Inside of Azure, we have an environment called Custom Vision Studio. This sample, if you AZD this sample up, it will create a custom vision environment for you. And what we're demoing in here is how to do image detection for graffiti on trains. And it will deploy the images, everything for you out of the box. And it will create a training job for you that you can run. This training job, after about 10 minutes, it will, if you send it an image, you can do a quick test. I can bring up an image for you or locally, and we can test it out, and it'll tell me, hey, is there graffiti on the train or not? The point of all of this is to showcase that there's different ways to build a model and deploy a model within Azure. Now, I think we're moving on to Alex or Gene.
And I believe that's me. Can anyone see my screen, or do you have any issues with my video resolution and can hear me okay? Okay, sorry, I didn't catch that. So what I'm going to share today is another feature that we have in AI in a box is the video analysis in a box. And it uses a newer feature that's available in Azure OpenAI called GPT-4 Turbo with Vision. It's a lot of words. And also with computer vision and image analysis. And what this does is it's a newer feature that's in preview in public preview in ChatGPT 4. And what you can use this for is to analyze videos. The way that I have deployed this, or I constructed this, is with you basically feed the videos to an Azure Blob Storage account, and then you orchestrate the whole GPT calls, the custom vision retrieval indexes it needs for videos um, within Azure Data Factory, and then writes the results to an Azure Cosmos DB. And the reason why I did it with Data Factory, I had actually started doing it with Python, but then I was thinking, well, there's a lot of folks that are not very comfortable with writing things with Python, and so it's probably more of the data developers, people that are used to like Power BI or some of these other tools. And so this is something that they can build within and execute within their own environment without even having to use any Python. So it's in the same repo as Niraj and was sharing. And from here, as I said, here's the architecture that would get deployed. So it would deploy a blob storage account. The data factory is scheduled, or you could run it to pick up videos whenever they land in the blob storage. You could have it run in batch, have it loop through files in blob storage. It's also very secure because as you may or may not know, you need to have those API keys to interact with both the computer vision and Azure OpenAI. And so that's all stored within Key Vault. From there, what it does is the videos are a little bit different with GPT-4 in that they also rely on an index, and those indexes are built within computer vision, and then that index is fed to Azure OpenAI. With the solution, you can also, you can have any kind of videos that you want. You can customize the prompt very easily. And then after it gets that prompt response, it's going to store the response in an Azure Cosmos DB. The particular scenario that I used for mine was I had videos of vehicles, and it was in order to detect if there was any damage to the vehicle. And so after it got the GPT-4 results, it would then say, hey, was there any damage to this vehicle? If there was, we're putting it in another folder, the video to a folder for someone to manually review, or if everything's processed fine, it runs it into a different folder. So, so this is what would deploy. It's very similar as to what Andreas was showing, that same sort of feature where you go in and you customize your parameters and everything. And if I go into my resource group, so a resource group is a way to store all those different Azure resources. And so these are the resources it deploys. So kind of starting from the top, we've got the Key Vault that holds the secrets. We've got the Cosmos DB database that stores the results. We've got the Azure OpenAI GPT-4 service and deployment. We have the Key Vault, and we have, oops, I think this is actually the data factory that runs here. We have the storage account that holds the videos. We've got the managed identity, and a managed identity is like credentials that you can use for authentication between different services. So we had to give the managed identity access to all the different services here. And then finally, there is the Azure AI services that is for that is actually for the computer vision. So now I'll give you a quick show of what that looks like in Data Factory. So I'm in my Data Factory, and I'm going to go to Author here, and I'm going to go look at the pipelines that are available. And so the first one that we have here is what we would call an orchestrator pipeline. And what this is doing is when this is called, if I run this in debug, so a debug is going to show me all the available prompts. So what I'm passing into this is a message, a prompt, the storage account name where the videos live, the temperature, the top, P if you want to use that, the Cosmos database information as well. So what this is really helpful for is right now I have this iterating through a loop. So it is going out to, when this gets called or triggered, it is going to get the secure values, and then it's going to go look at that storage account folder. And then for each file in the storage account, it's going to loop through and run the GPT analysis. And with that, it's really handy for if I'm just starting to implement this, and I may want to go in here and change the prompt for this message. Maybe I want to, change the wording here or on the user prompt. Maybe I want to play around with the temperature or the top P. Maybe I've got different videos, or I have different videos that I want to analyze. And so then I could, specify a different storage account, a different prompt for each one. And then I'm going to just, while I'm testing, I'm just going to loop through a bunch of files until I get that implemented. Later on, what I could do is I could add a trigger. And one of the things that it could do is actually trigger this pipeline to run every time a file gets loaded into blob storage. So from there, so for each video file, it's going to call this other pipeline. And sorry, I'm in a location that's not my normal location, so my video might be a little bit slow. But what it's going to do here, it's doing all this work where it's creating the index. So here you can see I'm doing actual REST API calls. And as I mentioned before, I could have done this all with Python or whatever your development language of choice is. But here it's just very easy for end users and for data developers to go in and just have to worry about the REST API calls rather than having to code things in Python. So it creates the index, it ingests the video into the index, and this is just waiting to make until the video is actually ingested. So we have to do another call to that. And then from there, after it's completed, so we're checking to make sure that it actually was ingested, I'm going to go into another loop here, or not a loop, but just another little pipeline here, where I am calling GPT-4, and I'm specifying all those parameters that I had put in my debug, and it's passing everything when it's passing everything through. And then here's my request body. So you could see here, this is actually all parameterized as well, including like the prompts, the index name, which gets generated automatically, the number of tokens, all this kind of stuff is parameterized. It makes the GPT call, and then it's going to send the results to a Cosmos DB. And then after that, it is going to query the Cosmos DB and check if it was if there was any damage or not. And then it is going to based upon that, it's going to specify what folder that video should get moved to, and then it's just going to move that folder, that file, to a different folder. So that's about it. Again, as you know, kind of the same sort of deployment as Andreas had went through, where it's all through Bicep, deploys all the resources for you, deploys the data factory along with all the pipelines. And that's it. So I think we're going on to Alex.
Assume that you guys can hear me and see me. This conversation is about Assistance API. Azure OpenAI Assistance API was recently released. The AI in a Box team, we contributed by building some of the demos and apps. Assistance APIs are yet another powerful technology for delivering intelligent applications. So what is Assistance API? As we know, the GPT models are RESTful models, mostly expose an endpoint completion. And Assistance APIs basically extend these API models to include things like assistance, threads, runtime messages. I'm not going to be able to go into this today, but I will try to showcase some of these advantages. Assistants also come with something called tools. The tools give the assistants a very powerful functionality, and I will showcase that functionality in a second. But functionality such as being able to have very powerful computational calculation and computational capabilities, being able to call functions in the middle of a prompt processing. So I figured that the best way to showcase this is to write an application without assistance and then to see an application running with assistance. And I am going to showcase this in a couple of ways very quickly. Don't worry, it won't take long. One is I'm going to show notebooks, and then I'm going to show an application. But on the first notebook, I wrote basically the scenario is I have a file, my finance, my portfolio has some investments. And what I want that to do is I wanted to generate a calculation of each of my investments. I wanted to generate, the current value, the realized gain and loss. And at the end of all of this, I wanted to send an HTML formatted message via email. So here we basically see that the output of running that prompt, basically the prompt, I tell it, hey prompt, go and grab this file, this finance file that is a CSV file. Get me the investments, get me the JSON for that investment. Then I have to take those investments out of that because I could have run it with a prompt, but remember, a prompt doesn't know anything about the latest prices of a stock. So I have to take that out. I have to calculate it, and then I feed it in. And I'm sure I can get fancy here, and I could do it. I could return it to the prompt and et cetera, et cetera. But here we just see the output. Now, let me show you the same application running with assistants. With assistants, now everything changes. I can now tell the assistant, hey, assistant, you're going to be able to execute a couple of functions. One of the functions is to get a stock price. The other one is to send an email. I prepare my assistant, and I tell the assistant, you're going to have a capability. You're going to be able to perform calculations, and you're going to be able to get the latest stock prices, and you're going to be able to send an email. Now, I read a file. I read the same file that I was reading before, the portfolio file. And I create the assistant, and I give the assistant the file that has the data, and I give it the tools that it's able to run. And then I prepare a number of functions, that assistants are they have a life cycle. So in that life cycle, they will stop and they will call those functions. So I prepare the functions to be able to handle that life cycle. I also prepare a function. Assistants have something amazing, which is the thread. A thread is a conversation history. So the conversation history is going to be managed for you. So I have to say, well, how am I going to handle these messages that I'm getting from it? And then I am going to be able to have conversations. And if a conversation with the assistant. And if we look at the output of the assistant, I can ask things like, hey, based on the portfolio, what investments do I own? And it tells me, you own these investments. What is the value of my portfolio? it gets the latest prices by calling that gets price function. It tells me, hi, this is your latest value. And then I can also do things like generate graphs and charts. I can say, hey, well, can you generate a chart of my best and worst investments? And at the end of all of this, I can say, well, can you do me a favor and send me an email formatted report? And it will do that by calling that email function that I gave it. Okay, so this is all great and fine. This is all running in Assistance, but what does that look like from an application perspective? And this is basically that same application now running as a full, web application where, I can basically ask it the same question. Using a document that has my data, giving the assistant some instructions, I can start asking the assistant some questions. What's the value of my investment? Can you generate graphs and charts? And, I can actually do more complex mathematical calculations. So with this, I hope that this is a very quick demo on Assistance, but again, Assistance make it a very compelling reason for adoption, because you can do things that were very difficult. You could do them before but with Assistance, it just makes it a lot easier. And with that, thank you, and pass it on back to Neeraj, I guess.
All right. I think we're back to me and Josh. So thank you to the AI in a Box team for presenting some demos of the sorts of ways you can extend AI on Azure and giving ideas for things to play with, like video analysis and GPT-4 with vision and the Assistance API, all things that I need to play with more. So now we're going to continue our showcase of the projects submitted for the AI chat app hack. So I've got a bunch of projects from lots of developers open on my screen here, and we're going to check out more of their hacks. So starting off, we have this one, which is in Spanish, and this is a chat on Mexican legal documents. And I think this is great because legal documents are always so obtuse and hard to read. And so here, now you're making them more accessible, right? So the example actually given by the developer was their father, lost their vision, and what benefits are there? So like ¿qué beneficios hay si alguien ha perdido su visión? All right, so let's see. So we're going to ask the question. So it says if you lost your vision, it depends on if it was total or partial, and then it says what happens if it's total or partial, and then of course we have the citation, and it's a very, very long document. So they managed to upload a pretty big PDF, which is still loading in my browser. So imagine that a normal citizen would have to actually go through this massive PDF and go to page 232 in order to find their information here. So this, I think, is really, really inspirational for trying to make legal stuff more accessible for the average person. So very cool. Okay, now another one. This looks really similar. The reason you're going to see a lot that looks similar is because a lot of them are based off the repo that we showed so much for the hackathon, which was this Azure Search OpenAI demo. So many of them do build off this repo because it's designed to be a really good starting off point. So we're going to show a bunch that build off this repo, but we also have ones that don't. So we'll see a mix. So the next one is one where they uploaded the American Disabilities Act standard, which is for people constructing houses. So I actually have a problem with my house right now with the rails, and I've been trying to figure out if it's accessible. So do stairs need rails on both sides? Because I actually only have rails on one side of my stairs, and my mom thinks that it is not adhering to guidelines. So it says, according to 2010 standards, handrails are required on both sides of stairs and ramps, an exception in assembly area as well. My front door is not an assembly area. And then we could go and look at the citation. So I need to find a contractor to build me some rails. And it has, it's got all these like diagrams. I actually spent a while looking through this morning. just figure out the standards for Rails. So that is very cool. Once again, making difficult information easier to sift through, especially for folks building buildings. They don't really have time to sift through this whole thing. Next one, enhancing historical research with RAG chatbots. And this developer actually was inspired by the work they did for their thesis in university, where it took them so much time to sift through old historical newspapers. So I'll try an example question here so I can show you the newspaper. So when they were in university working on their thesis, that one didn't get it. There was one I did earlier. So what were what were hate incidents during the World War I? So this is all World War I newspapers, and it's very interesting because they tried to ingest two different kinds of newspapers. So one of them had a really specific typeface called Fructar, which was very difficult to parse using our normal OCR technology. So they realized they'd have to build a custom parser for that newspaper because it's a really, really, really fancy type. But they were able to this one worked before. Let me see if I can get this one. They were able to parse the other newspaper. Let me see if I can show it in the video because I had it working earlier today. Turn the volume down. Okay. Yeah, so you can see these are the kinds of there we go. There. Yeah. So this is the kind of newspaper they were able to archive. So I think that's really cool to see how you can ingest more than just standard modern PDFs. You could ingest historical documents as well. And it can do a pretty good job when the typeface is pretty readable like this. The other typeface was very fancy, and that requires a custom extractor.
Yeah, it can be hard to read sometimes as well if you're not used to looking at that particular font or typeface.
Oh yeah. I think that other typeface is hard for humans and for bots.
Yeah, not just AI.
Yeah. So that was really cool. Here's another one that is chatting with stock data. So we can just watch this. So this is actually, I was telling Josh that I am just so bad at stocks, and I always call up other people. I'll call up my dad and be like, Dad, just tell me, where am I supposed to invest? I don't understand. So this is actually probably an app that I should use in order to understand. So it actually is looking at a bunch of sources. It's looking at news sources like Reddit for sentiment, like Yahoo News for stock news. But you can also upload your own portfolio so that it can kind of combine the news with the information in your own portfolio. So that's a really nice way of mashing together public data with different sources with information in your own portfolio. Okay, really cool. All right. Next one is an Android application. So this is a very different UI. And so here I wanted to show actually the upload part. So it's an Android application where you can upload a doc. So here they go and they upload some document they have here about Azure Power Platform. And then once they upload the doc, then you can chat on the doc. So this is actually a really common feature that we see people adding to their RAG apps is, starting with some base data for many of them, but then also letting people bring in their own documents. And I like that they made an Android app for this because that might be what works better for some people is to have a mobile application. Now, I don't have an Android, I have an iPhone, so I can't actually run it myself, but hopefully iOS app coming soon. Very cool. Let's see. Next one. All right, this one really cool. So they are helping you chat on your APIs. So if any of you have worked with APIs, like HTTP APIs, you may know about Swagger, or also known as Open API. This is a way of documenting an API. It is an open standard, and it's supported by most APIs, where you can write this JSON file that describes the endpoints of your API and like what parameters they take and what responses they give. So the cool thing with this is you can upload your Open API JSON schema, and then you go to the chat. And let me see, what's the title of anime ID 1. Okay. So what's it going to do is actually try and both figure out the endpoint that it should hit up and then actually make a request to that endpoint. So it's actually executing a request. That's really cool, right? So it figured out what endpoint to use and then made an HTTP request to that endpoint, got back the response, and then answered the question. So it's doing multiple steps. I originally just thought it was like, oh, like, you know, what anime endpoints are there? That's what I asked originally. And I think it actually, we'll see, it might actually answer this. But then I realized after chatting with the developers that, yeah, so this is not how you're supposed to use it. You should use it like this. After chatting with the developers, I found out like it's actually going to go the whole flow of actually executing HTTP requests. So that is super interesting, and I'm really intrigued by this because I do work a lot with open API schemas. Okay, next ones we have are this one is built using Streamlit, and we didn't talk at all about Streamlit during our sessions, but a bunch of people use Streamlit for their hacks. And I don't know if anybody in the chat has used Streamlit, but Streamlit is, you know, it's really designed to be an easy way to write Python and generate front ends that are fully featured. So you'll see like these are full featured front ends, and then I show you the code, and it's like a single file, and it's really short. So if you love Python and you don't love writing front ends, and you're writing AI apps or data apps, you should definitely check out Streamlit. I admit I love writing HTML, so to me, I'm like, I want to write HTML, but this is really popular, and lots of people were able to build really functional apps, highly functional apps, using Streamlit very quickly. So we'll take a look at, let's see. So this is an example. This is a Streamlit UI here. And here I'm chatting about Azure pricing. So it's actually, and it's using a variety of tools. So we've talked a lot about tools recently. So these are tools that it uses in order to look up things in both the Azure SDK, a couple different SDKs, like this retail pricing SDK, because it's both trying to figure out availability, like what regions exist for Azure VMs, but also trying to figure out the pricing. So it's using multiple Azure APIs in order to answer a question. So you can see the steps it takes to answer a question. These are like tools that it's calling, like functions it's calling. And then once it gets all the information it needs, then it can answer that question and give our pricing results. And so you can look at, if we look at the code for it here, because I just want to show, you know, like what does a Streamlit code look like? So you see, you know, import Streamlit, and then okay, those are all the functions and tools, but you can write this UI really, really pretty quickly here. So definitely something to check out for if you love Pilot and don't love Python. You love Python and don't love writing front ends. Let's see. We also have, here's another one. Oh, this is the same one, but this is actually in Chinese. So I want to demonstrate that actually, like, they can fully support writing all this stuff in Chinese, and they recorded their video in Chinese. So this isn't, you know, demonstrating once again that we can support more than just the English language users. They were able to have their full conversations in Chinese with their bot. All right, a very similar one. It looks very similar because it also uses Streamlit. This one was talking about Azure architectures. So you can see here similar UI, and that's for but they uploaded documents about Azure architectures from the Azure Architecture Center. And so here they got a response, and you can take a look at, you know, the code here to see actually how they built it. And this one's actually a bit of a shorter example. So if you do want to see what does it look like to, you know, make a UI in Streamlit, this might be a simple one to start off with and get started. Next one, this one is also a Streamlit UI. So I bunched all these together so we could get an idea for what Streamlit ones could look like. And this one does look a little bit different. The thing I wanted to show with this one is that they do support uploading YouTube links. And I wanted to show just the code for that, just to show these days, like how few lines of code you could ingest a YouTube URL. So here you can see, you know, we get the YouTube URL, you transcribe the URL, you get the text chunks from the URL, get a vector store and you make a conversation and then you write it. So, you know, it's just such few lines of code now in order to ingest a YouTube video. And it really speaks to like how much, you know, community support there is for being able to write these AI applications, especially in Python. So I thought that was neat to show there. And finally, we wanted to show this one, which has an amazing architecture diagram. I don't know how they made this beautiful diagram, but what they did was that they deployed to Azure Container Apps so that they could use multiple, multiple apps. I'm trying to get this to zoom in a good. All right, okay? So that they could use multiple apps as well as an Azure function. So they use the function here in order to ingest new blobs. And this is actually a fairly common architecture to use multiple containers to handle different parts of your application. So definitely something to consider especially if you like doing containerized development, is whether you want to be using Docker containers and deploying those to Azure Container Apps and having different containers for different things. And yeah, so this is a HR application. And let me just reload it. It is container app. It's the way they configured it. It has to warm up the server and come back. So we need to get that container app to start up again. Let's see if it'll come back to us. Josh, you also took a look at this one.
Yeah, it's actually really cool because first off, that architecture is really cool to look at, but the functionality and the use case is also really awesome. So if you've ever thought about how many resumes are going in to HR that hiring managers are looking at for any type of a particular position, often it can be really daunting to look at all of those resumes. And so by using this tool, you can actually upload all of your resumes to the tool and this architecture will parse that document and send out a JSON of that particular file. And then you can ask, let's say you want this particular example, you want a net developer, right? So you can actually target and be like, hey, I want like a net developer that has like these particular qualifications. And then the system will respond back with people who have those qualifications based on the resumes that you parsed. So it's really, really great and takes away a lot of the heavy lifting for people who are trying to hire when you get maybe like 300 applications plus, even with 50 applications plus. Imagine just like sitting there, you're the hiring manager and you're like, man, I have to look at all of these different resumes and then just like rank them all based on like what they have and what they don't have. When you could just use this matcher here, basically this hiring buddy. So it's really cool to see this application.
Yeah, that gives me flashbacks to when I was doing hiring, and it's just, it's nice to have ways to make it easier. And this also shows up having like saved conversation history. That also is a popular feature to have, so you can revisit things, and especially here, because if you're consistently looking for a .NET developer, you might want to add to this conversation and say like, oh, is there anybody new? What if we need somebody who also has Python experience, right? So you could have this persistent thread about some particular thing you're looking for. And that could definitely make sense for use cases like this one.
Yeah, and you can even create multiple threads. Let's say you're hiring for multiple different positions. You have a different thread for each position you're hiring for. So pretty cool project here.
I actually didn't try chatting with it yet. Oh, there are no Python developers. Sad.
No.
Yeah, they only uploaded 2 sample developers for this demo. And I think those developers were not Python developers. All right. So super cool. Those are all the ones we had time to show today. And we even went over a bit. But if you are interested in learning more about the ones we showed, you can check out the submissions in the issues under the AI Chat App Hack repo. Most of them share their code, not all of them, but quite a few of them do share their code, and also they give more details about the architecture and how they work. And hopefully this can inspire other people that are thinking about how to build AI chat apps, about the kinds of features you could do, about the kind of data you could use, and how easily you could get started. Because we saw low code ones. We saw ones that were, just customizing the data of our repo. And then we saw ones that were very, very, very customized. So there's really such a range with the kind of apps you can develop. If you are participating in the hackathon and you haven't submitted your hack yet, you have a few more hours. You have until tonight, my time zone, so 23:59 PT. You have until then to submit. So we look forward to seeing more submissions, and then we will be judging. And it's been a lot of fun. Thank you, everyone, for joining all these sessions, all of our speakers, everyone who's helped in the forums, and who's engaged with us. This was really fun for us, and we hope to do it again in the future.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been a pleasure to work from behind the scenes and help out a little bit on the front lines as well. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everyone.